I'm Lynn Garlick and I've lived in the St George region for over 20 years. I am an author and my book is titled Binding, More Than a Motherhood Memoir, and it was released just a month ago. So my story is one of everyday resilience. And I guess the thing that's different in this book is that I'm a social worker who assists families in trouble, and only to find that my own family was in trouble. So I had to first recognise that I was in an abusive relationship and to leave that relationship, raising children on my own as a single parent. This is a really common story, but not one that's often heard. What I wanted to do in the book is connect that individual story with a broader social story or narrative, and just show the institutions that are not very helpful for families in that situation when really those institutions are meant to help families, and also just the attitudes and judgments that can be really subtle but can really have impact as well. So basically, I wanted to tell a beautiful motherhood story and show the joys of motherhood, but also just how we could make life nicer and simpler for people who have had difficulties, single parents in particular. Yeah, and to celebrate a story of resilience and share that with others. And since I've written the book, lots of people who've read the book have told me that they relate to the story in some way. A lot of women have had very similar stories. Also, men have contacted and told me about their childhoods in families, and that's what I really wanted with the book, for people to connect with it and to help them and support them and to celebrate, their resilience. Obviously, people need to be supported in the right way at the right time. So that's a big thing that all of us can do to help people through their difficult times, and even, checking in on people when things pass the crisis. And I think for individuals, I think knowing your own personal strength is important, but it also is important to know that there is nothing wrong with you. That is why I also wanted to show in a broader context how society can often make us feel wrong or less of a person if we're not part of the norm. So if we don't have a typical nuclear family, there's lots of ways you're made to feel like that's a lesser family. And so I think, all of that impacts on someone's resilience and confidence. So obviously, when people go through a divorce, every family comes into contact with the family court and the family court rules around that. There's a lot that's written about the impact on that in relation to domestic violence and coercive control. There's a lot of opportunity for people who have been abusive to continue the abuse because of the way that system works. And likewise, for the Child Support Agency, same thing. There's a lot of opportunity for people who have been abusive to continue to abuse their family financially and in all the ways that you can. So they're kind of standard things, but there's also lots of things that schools could do, and none of this is out of necessarily being malicious. It's just an ignorance sometimes when children live in two different homes in the week. Just simple things like some lockers, places to store the things they have to remember in the week. It's a lot for primary school kids to do that. Often they're kind of punished or, I guess it is punishment, or miss out on some privileges or something if they've forgotten their sports shoes or their hat or their jumper or whatever it is. There's just a lot of ways that schools could make that simpler. There's a lot of children in that situation, so it should just be considered as part of the norm, the way you do things, and schools should actively be thinking about how they could make those lives easier for those kids. The other difficulty in terms of institutions is the way that we employ people. So obviously when women have been raising a family or haven't been able to work at their full capacity. For me, for example, I went backwards in my career for many, many years. And then when you try to step up, the interviewer will ask, what did you do in your last role? Whereas that's not really where I was in a senior role. So there's just a lot of things that in the standard way we do things that don't allow for career paths that are not linear, and very few women's career paths are linear. Like when they've been raising children, they often go to part-time and casual, which is what I did, and then it's really hard to get back into a senior role or to be considered for those roles.